So, as Reg said, I'm going to try and inform you a little bit about what goes on in your gut, and in particular all the microbes that live in your gut and why they're so important for your health, and why under some conditions they can actually cause quite severe disease. So there's been a significant shift in our understanding of what causes disease, and I think, traditionally we've always thought of it's to do with who we are, our genes, and then the things we do as we go through life. So lifestyle and what we eat and what we get exposed to in the environment. And it's those two that come together to either keep us healthy or to cause disease. But what's apparent now is that in the middle of this, and that may be involved in interpreting a lot of these things that we do and eat, are our gut microbes. And they're a direct link to our genetic material, and they can in turn influence how we react and respond to things in the environment and how they can keep us healthy or not. And then what's interesting is that probiotic bacteria that are present in some of these health foods, here's one from Morrison's, and this is Actimel, they contain bacteria that produce a neurotransmitter called GABA. And GABA is normally produced in the body, and what it does is it dampens down excitable neurons, so it relaxes you. So, and this has been used by the pharmaceutical industry to develop mimics of gamma so they can overstimulate these receptors to make you even more relaxed. And in fact, even knock you out, because anesthetics can work by mimicking the GABA that is produced by these bacteria. And vagus nerve stimulation by hormones and neurotransmitters in the gut can drive excessive eating behavior. So overstimulation is not necessarily a good thing. And not surprisingly, gut microbes can actually regulate how much of these neurotransmitters and hormones are produced in the gut. And they can manipulate this to their own advantage by producing things that can block or stimulate the nerves in the gut. So microbes control eating behavior by influencing signals that are delivered to the brain and by the vagus nerve. And two of the most important ones are dopamine and serotonin. So dopamine, associated with rewards, pleasure, compulsions. Serotonin regulates our mood, our memory, sleep, cognition. Dopamine, about half of the amount of dopamine produced in the body is produced in the gut. And some gut microbes can produce vast amounts of dopamine. And some of you may know that L-dopamine is used to treat Parkinson's disease. Serotonin is even more striking because virtually all the serotonin in the body is made in the gut. And gut microbes produce factors that can mimic or block serotonin action in the gut. And deficiency of serotonin is linked to depression. So I hope you can see that microbes, by manipulating just these two neurotransmitters, can profoundly influence our mood, behavior, whether we're anxious, whether we're relaxed, how much we sleep, how much we eat. And so linking this to a disease, this is interesting, this is a more recent study now, linking gut microbes to a disease that's called autism spectrum disorder, so autism. So we know from looking at patients' microbiotas that they're disturbed. They have alterations in the makeup of microbes, and also there are altered levels of what the microbes produce. And there's a mouse here that can develop autism-like syndrome. In particular, excessive grooming and vocalization is affected as it is in autistic children. And what this group that worked with this mouse showed that they could restore or treat this mouse by using probiotics, so live bacteria. And so the live bacteria altered the gut composition of the microbes, and it looked now more like normal animals. And this was linked to resealing of the gut. So these animals had a leaky gut, and it was the leakiness allowing these microbe-derived byproducts to get into the bloodstream and into the brain. But as soon as the barrier was improved, the leakage stopped, and it restored the normal levels that you would find in the serum, and it stopped or halted some of the features of autism. So this is animal experimentation, but it clearly shows that there could be a role for alterations in gut microbes that are linked to neurodegenerative diseases and autism in particular.
Many of the brilliant and great scientists that I have researched have said that yeast was the first cause of autism and all brain disease and disorders. And we were warned about this organism over 2,000 years ago. Number 6, the second paragraph down, teaches, "Then Jesus said to them, take heed and beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and Sadducees." Leaven is yeast, and under microscopic inspection, yeast resembles the serpent from the Garden of Eden. The Bible teaches you that Jesus meant the words of the Pharisees. He didn't. He meant the organism, and now you know why.
Microbes in the gut can actually alter the drugs. They can alter their structure, they can produce factors that interfere with the drugs, and they can alter how the body reacts to the drugs. And here are some examples. So the bad ones are these drugs here, which are painkillers, anti-cancer drugs, drugs used to control high blood pressure. In certain individuals that have certain populations of microbes, administering of these drugs will lead to increased toxicity. And with some antibiotics as well, there's a similar story. But there's a good side to this as well, in that gut microbes can process drugs to make them more active, more efficacious, such as this antibiotic here and this anti-inflammatory drug. So what this means is that how you react to a drug can depend on the type of microbes you have in your gut.
The cells of your body do this for you. And having gut microbes in your body that trick you that you need sugar, that is why people have a so-called sugary tooth. That's bullshit. Yeast craves sugar, and in the body yeast turns the sugar into alcohol. And this messes with the mind. It stops you from being able to think clearly. It clouds your brain.
You know, our mind says, no, take the healthy option, but there's something inside of us that says, no, I really like that piece of cake, okay? And it's maybe that gut feeling, you know, I really am hungry for a piece of pie rather than an apple. So, what is the evidence that normal gut microbes can influence brain development and behavior? Because that's what we're talking about, brain development and behavior. So this is a summary of an experiment carried out a few years ago, looking at our germ-free mice again. These are sterile mice, and mice that have populations of gut microbes. This here shows the expression of an anxiety-related gene. So the yellow identifies high levels in the brains of these mice that have gut microbes, but very little expression in germ-free mice. And this maze here is a measurement of how curious, adventurous mice are. So if they're cautious, timid, they'll spend most of their time in the enclosed section, away from the light. But if they're adventurous like this one, you know, they'll be on the open arms. So what this study showed was that gut microbes can affect normal brain development and make these mice more curious. Sorry, wrong way. And perhaps more creative and trying to escape. So it's this fear extinction. You have gut microbes, you become a little bit more cautious, reticent, a little bit more anxious. If you don't have gut microbes, you know, it's the great escape. You're looking for ways out. More striking experiment is this one shown here. So we've got two strains of mice, what we'll call timid and adventurous. So do gut microbes have anything to do with why these animals are timid or adventurous? So what we did, not what we did, this group in Canada did, was they took the stool from the timid mouse, isolated the microbes, and put it into an adventurous mouse, and that mouse became timid. The other way around, they took the microbes from an adventurous mouse, put it into a timid mouse, and these are germ-free mice, so they're an empty vessel that you can put the microbes into, and they became now adventurous. So this is a direct causal link again, showing that gut microbes can influence the behavior of mice at least.
And you can get all kinds of symptoms from food-triggered immune reactions. Lethargy, stupor, disorientation, paranoia, delusions, hallucinations, agitation, rage, panic attacks, criminal behavior, and even seizures. And one of the interesting connections with food allergies is schizophrenia. I met a researcher from Sweden, and he was doing some primary research in this, which was very interesting. And they found that schizophrenics, 88% were allergic to wheat, 60% to milk, 50% to corn, 100% of them are allergic to either gliadin or gluten, which is added to breads and pastries and stuff. It's in almost all the breads. It's part of the wheat product. All of them are allergic to gluten and gliadin. So what he did is, in this big psychiatric hospital, he took one group of schizophrenics and he put them on a diet completely free of gliadin and gluten. Almost all of them returned completely to normal. And as long as they avoided gliadin and gluten, they were normal. When they got back on it, even a small amount of it, they were fully schizophrenic again and had to be hospitalized. Case after case after case. So that shows that this can have a terrible effect on brain function and could end up in a mental institute. Now, ironically, food allergies often make you crave the very food you're allergic to. So you see people allergic to a food, and that's what they want to eat. They'll eat it and eat it and eat it, and of course, every time they do, they get sick. And I don't know how many people we've had that complained of unable to think and cloudy thinking, and you found a food allergy, took them off the food, and they're just amazed. They say, I can't believe how clearly I can think now. So these are profound effects. And this has all been worked out in the laboratory. We can demonstrate this. We know the immune cytokines that actually do it.
We're developing a society because of all of these different toxins known to affect brain function. We're seeing a society that not only has a lot more people of lower IQ, but a lot fewer people of higher IQ. In other words, a dumbing down, a chemical dumbing down of society. So everyone's sort of mediocre. That leaves them dependent on government because they can't excel. We have these people of lower IQ who are totally dependent. Then we have this mass of people who are going to believe anything they're told because they can't really think clearly. And very few people of very high IQ who have good cognitive function who can figure this all out. And that's what they want. So, you can kind of piece it together as to why they are so insistent in spending so many hundreds of millions of dollars of propaganda money to dumb down society.
When you put your faith in the hands of your government, especially the British government that has always been led by science, they allow the poisoning to continue. They covered up from 2000 to the year 2014 that a deadly bacteria was in chickens, it infested chickens, Campylobacter. Your gut acids cannot kill this bacteria, and that makes it eat away at the lining of your gut, which causes leaky gut, which, as you've just discovered, also affects the mind. None of your governments can be trusted. The French scientists were injecting bacteria and toxins into that meat. This article teaches that 20 French scientists from all over France, not just one laboratory, were caught injecting meat that got back into the food chain. Their health minister at the time, Benoit Hamon, said it was detrimental to human health. And then we had the story breaking about Tesco's meat all across Europe, in Ireland. At the time the Labour Party were in power, and Tesco sponsors the Labour Party. Our ancients taught us we are what we eat. And in order for you to rightify your mind, you must now avoid meat and dairy products, because the organisms that are in them can control your mind. And not only that, make your tablets stronger and more toxic and dangerous to you. This supermarket now controls the meat and dairy industry for most of Europe. And the regulations should have been tough after CJD, what they called mad cow disease. That was caused by the feed that they fed the cattle. That is because it had yeast in it, the organism that we were warned of over 2,000 years ago. And a friend of my family, who is a cancer scientist, discovered that yeast was the first carrier of cancer around our body. And the late, great Dr. Holder Clark discovered Clostridium also carries cancer around the body. Clostridia is a bacteria that forms in shit. And for all you childish-minded people out there that are now thinking, what are we supposed to eat then? Well, you'd be safer off eating your own shit rather than somebody else's, because that is what most of your food now is. And that is why we were warned. You are what you eat. So when you eat shit, you become full of it. And that is why many of you do not know the truth. Another way they control your mind is education. The press, the TV, what you see, hear and read isn't the truth. It's what they want you to know. That is why many of you now have a mind full of useless information, mind-altering drugs, or quite literally shit. It has now become completely obvious to a complete idiot that even their medication doesn't work. So prevention is better than cure. And the way you cure yourself is to stop putting the disease in you. Cigarettes, alcohol, drugs, cakes, biscuits, tea, coffee, and avoiding meat and dairy. There are other foods out there. Just take a little time to care for yourself and cure yourself, because there are those amongst you that make great wealth out of your sickness and disease, as they did in biblical times. That is why the most courageous man to ever grace this earth only entered their places of worship to throw their money tables up in the air. These people avoid yeast religiously, and if we had listened to Jesus all those years ago, there would have been no sickness and disease. You have now discovered that toxins and microbes can affect your mind, take over your mind. You are an organism, and the microscopic organisms can affect your mind. And when they overtake your organisms, your tiny organisms, then it will affect your mind, as is the case with alcohol. Eventually people become argumentative, aggressive, violent, even murderous. You see, when you flood your mind with the wrong elements, you'll have the wrong thoughts, which will lead to the wrong actions. And sadly, many people end up either in prison or in a hospital ward or 6 foot under. You must stop this from happening to yourself by purifying your mind. That was the main message of Jesus, to keep your mind pure. It is why he said, your happiness and salvation is not to be sought in the external environment, but within the individual state of mind with regard to the environment. You now know that toxins and organisms can alter the state of your mind. You can reverse it, and then you will alter the state of your life. It will get better. You must look after your mind in order for it to get better for you. It's your mind that controls your world. Look after it. It's the only one you've got.